Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the first live edition of the Fly With Us podcast. This podcast is bringing the art of conversation, self love, self care, mental health care and protection, life lessons, love lessons, and everything in between. Today is the first show that we kick off our hip hop series. As you know, November is now National Hip Hop History Awareness Month. So I brought a team of fellas with me to introduce you to this thing we love called hip hop. Sir Pickett, hit us with that mindfulness minute.
Word up. This mindfulness minute this week comes from a quote from headspace.com, which is a meditation website. Um, and it's a quote from different artists. It says, "There's a great deal of BS that people think about when they make music. Things that don't matter," Rick Rubin says. "Meditation kind of wipes away and you focus on the real job at hand, as opposed to thinking about what management wants, what the record company wants, or what somebody at the radio station might think." While there is a dusty notion that hip hop is all about cars, money, and clothes, and that still may ring true in certain acts, there's no denying that this genre has evolved by unmasking both stigmas attached to mental health issues, stereotypes, and about meditation. The rap game is well set up for a healthier, happier road ahead for artists and fans alike. Um, with
You froze up, Pickett. What happened?
me, can you hear me?
We can now. You froze for a second there.
Oh wow. Okay. So here's the definition according to dictionary.com. A popular or big city a popular culture of big city teenagers that includes rap music, breakdancing, and graffiti art.
Wow, that was probably the lamest definition of hip hop I've ever heard.
Right. So going to first, I would ask Manny Fresh, what is Manny? I mean, no, let me go first. First off, who I pick? I'm gonna go with the youngest first. Soup, what is hip hop to you?
Hip hop to me is a culture um, that is comprised of many things. Some of that definition is correct, but not all of it. It definitely includes rap music, as well as other facets, breakdancing, graffiti, things like that. But it's definitely a culture. Now, I wouldn't say big city culture. I would say it's the culture that drives America at this point.
Word. So to Manny Faces, who has been deep into hip hop for many years. What is hip hop to you?
I appreciate y'all having, by the way. What up, everyone else? I started right off. Soup said culture, so that's it. Hip hop as is a culture, not a subculture, not a genre by itself, but a full-fledged global culture at this point. Obviously, it's Hip Hop History Month. We know where it started and how it began, and most of the world, when they think of hip hop, they think of rap music. The genre underneath the umbrella. But hip hop is that culture. A lifestyle, a conglomeration of mentalities and ways of thinking and ways of seeing the world, the ways of putting yourself in the world, ways of reacting to the world. That's cultural. That's an ethos. So to me, hip hop, obviously there's so many subdivisions and things that fall under that umbrella. But just like you would have any kind of ethnic, religious, cult, has a set of lifestyles and cultural aspects to it. When you look up the definition, it may be incomplete, but if you look up the definition of culture, you'll see that it's sort of that lifestyle, that ethos, that way of thinking, that groupthink of a certain amount of people, and more importantly, not what the dictionaries or the establishments might call it, the participants themselves call it a culture. And so that, definitively is what it is. If you're a part of it and you look at it as a culture, then that's what it is. That's what hip hop is at its core.
Word up to my brother Cooley the Curator. What is hip hop to you?
So some of y'all might remember, but there was a compilation, a Most Def compilation, came out in like the early 2000s, and the title of it was so dope to me. It said, "We are hip hop, you, me, everybody," and I always just kind of held to that, man. I think that hip hop existed before there was a name for it. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of the elements, you know what I mean? People were rapping before hip hop existed. People were doing graffiti before hip hop existed. Quote unquote, like as a definition, you know what I mean? But I think that hip hop is just like it's a way of being. It's a state of being. If you meet somebody tomorrow that you never met before and they shake your hand a certain way, you can be like, oh, that's their hip hop. You know what I mean? If they dress as if you meet a girl tomorrow, she dresses the way, you can be like, oh, she's hip hop. You know what I mean? It's a very beautiful but very intangible thing. You know what I mean? And you just know it when you see it, or you know it when you hear it.
Word up. For me, I would say concur with all things that Manny, Supe, and Cooley said. For me, adding on to that has been a saving grace. I don't know where I would be without the culture. I was born in 74, at the birth of hip hop receiving its name, conceived in 73, which is August 11th, is recognized as the starting modern day starting point, I would say, with the party at Cedar and Sedgwick. So it has always been a part of my life. And we talked about, when we did a live version at the festival, we talked about this before, is that 85, I left the suburbs and moved to the projects, which is a culture shock in itself. But I was already having hip hop, taking hip hop with me. I've been involved in many of the elements. And that age, at that stage, I wasn't rapping yet. But I was definitely b-boying. I was breakdancing with the cardboard like everybody else. 86, I started rapping and old school rapping with the chants. We had a joint called Milk Does the Body Good, like the commercial back in the day, with some beatboxing. Late 80s, I DJ'd, not like what turntablism is nowadays. I'm basically just DJing at parties and school functions and stuff like that. And then I think this thing that stayed the most was the MCing for me. I also tagged. And I wouldn't say I was a graffiti artist. I would just say I tagged. I don't have art skills like that, but I threw my name up as many places as I could. So I dwelled into those four main elements. And, we're all into hip hop, so we know that there are other elements that people have added since then, street fashion, knowledge, beatboxing, but those four main elements of graffiti, b-boying, DJ, and MCing have always stuck with. So hip hop that saved me, especially, like I said, leaving the suburbs, going into the projects and having to adjust. And you're talking about going into the projects during the crack era. I'm coming from not having to lock my door, walk around anytime of day or night I want to seeing people getting stabbed up and shot and Night of the Living Bassheads on an everyday, all day basis. So I would go to my room, and there was a record store back in the day called Record and Tape Outlet, and it wasn't that far from where I lived at. And I didn't even know who these artists were. I would just thumb through, like, me and Cooley do now, still digging to this day, and just pick stuff basically based off the album art. And I would just go to my room, throw those records on. CDs wasn't a thing yet. I did get some cassettes, but most of it was on vinyl then, and just take me away from all that was outside the home. So like I said, hip hop has been a saving grace for me, and I will always try to promote and educate on what real hip hop culture is, and always continue to strive to make it better and not a detrimental thing to our community and a society as a whole. For real.
All right, so of course it's very cliche, but I gotta ask the question, and it doesn't matter who goes first. When did you fall in love with hip hop?
I'll jump in. I'll answer it quick. First of all, we about the same age, Pickett. So, coming up at that parallel time, and I grew up right outside of New York City on Long Island, so sixth borough. We were right outside of where everything was popping off, but just like a half step behind. And coming up with it before we even knew, as brother said, like what to call it ourselves. It was just like this mash of new sounds and new things. My origin story goes to being in Long Island, being out in the New York City radio range. You could only hear rap on the radio Friday, Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. All right, Red Alert on Kiss FM, Mr. Magic Molly Ball on WBLS. So, you had some like college stations, that were on like Wednesday night at midnight. But that was when the big dogs were on the radio. You would get your cassette, you would get ready to record for the week because you're not going to hear rap on the radio that much, during the week. And that became sort of a ritual for young folks. Again, we're talking like the 80s when it was starting to really, percolate. I would always go to my friend Craig's house. Craig, we'd be in his basement playing ColecoVision, doing all that, stuff. Friday nights, man, and we'd be listening to the radio. And it was around that time, sort of, my dad was a blues and jazz connoisseur, so I had a lot of background in music, and music always playing the kind of the roots and some of the DNA of hip hop music. But we were young and we were rebellious and we were teenagers and we were messing around, and the sounds of hip hop really kind of took to us, being as gritty and new, just fresh, And it was My Melody, Rakim, was sort of the song that I once that earworm got in my head and just twisted me all about. And I'd already been obviously part of it a little bit, but once I had that, man, that something about that day changed the game for me personally. I enjoyed what was happening. I enjoyed that camaraderie, that as you say, we can go somewhere, anywhere in the world and know someone's hip hop right out of that started to formulate right around there. I had friends. I'm an only child, you know what I mean? And white dude growing up in a very diverse neighborhood, and I had people that we had that camaraderie and that fellowship, over music, and then over beat banging on the table, doing the drums, and it was that time frame. It was that atmosphere that I fell in love with hip hop.
Word up.
Yeah, for me it was Fear of a Black Planet. That was the album that got the hooks in me. I had, I was real young, so I'd heard like MC Hammer and stuff like that, Vanilla Ice, and I liked that stuff. But I had we grew up poor, so I had everything I had was a hand-me-down from some cousin somewhere or whatever. So I ended up getting a bunk bed from like my second cousin or something by marriage. And in the bunk bed, he had carved, and he was an older kid. You always look up to the older kids when you're young. So he had carved Fear of a Black Planet in the bunk bed post. And I was like, oh, I heard of that. I've seen that album like in magazines or whatever. And but I was like, oh, the older kid is listening to this. I need to listen to that. I need to check that out. So I got the tape, and this everything for me changed from that point on. Just hearing the samples and like how they were, all the different sources they were pulling from, and then Chuck D's voice just booming. 911 as a Joke was like my favorite song of all time for a really long time. The whole way their crew was set up, the way that they moved, they had like the S1Ws. It was like militant, but also they had Flavor Flav, and they were having fun, and it was just like all these emotions that were in me as a young kid. Anger and wanting to have fun and wanting to party, but also wanting to like learn. It was just like the perfect package of all of that. And I just was like, oh, this is hip hop. Okay, cool. And then I never listened to Hammer or Vanilla Ice again after that.
For me, I guess it's a little different because I'm a little younger than you guys. So rap music and hip hop music was always around. But I guess the moment or album that like really solidified it for me was Southern Playalistic by Outkast. I remember exactly where I was when I heard it and everything. Shout out to Kenny Finley. But after that moment, that's when I really started reading liner notes and memorizing songs and developing my own taste of rap music. I had older cousins and friends who would listen to all kind of stuff, but Outkast for me, because it was just so different than anything I'd ever heard. And after that, I was stuck.
Word up. For me, like I said, I would have to say the first song that I heard was not the usual that people my age. Usually, people my age, it's always Sugar Hill Gang was the first joint I heard. But in my mind, I think I heard The Message before that. I mean, I might have heard Sugar Hill Gang before that, but it didn't stick to me like when I heard The Message. Of course, Sugar Hill Gang was released before The Message, but when I heard The Message, that's when it just like really, really opened me up, and I was like, yo. I could feel how powerful it was. And like I said, at that point, I wasn't rapping myself. I was really into B-boy. And I would love when that joint came on, I would just get loose. Of course, the other joints too, like, you know what I'm saying, Incredible Bongo Band, everybody loves those breaks in that era for B-boy. But The Message, it was like, it was really talking to me. I felt that. And that's when I was like, yo, I love this to death. I would say what made me want to really become like that, I thought that I was going to be a professional in hip hop, was Fresh Tour. I think that's what it's called, with the Fat Boy, Salt and Pepper, UTFO, Dang the Dang. I saw them, I think I was in 8th grade. And of course, we snuck back to the behind of Hair Arena, which was a big arena in Dayton at that time. And Buff was already on a bus, but we saw Cool Rock and Prince Marky D come out, and they both shook my hand, and I was like, yeah, this is what I wanted to be forever. That feeling. I just wanted that feeling to last just forever.
What I like about everything, different age groups or different perspectives, is that these were also touch points where we all fell in love with hip hop. You know what I mean? Like when Outkast came out, you know, that was like a reignition for it. Was like, oh wow, and there were so many. Obviously, everyone has their own, but throughout, you know, the whole history of our personal involvement with it, you know, when I saw these, I remember these two guys did Lottie Dottie for a talent show at school, and just crushed it, killed it, and it was like this is so it's just everything. So I love that each of these things sort of. Like, we wouldn't disagree. I had my first car I bought for myself was a black Riviera, a 1979 Buick Riviera, and it was black, and it was black tinted, and it had a black rag top, and it was a piece of junk. It didn't last me like a week, but I thought, but it was fly. It was fly. I looked like, you know, it had like you play the horn. It was the Godfather theme. It was the most ridiculous thing in the world. But to the point, on the side, you know, you could get that chrome on the side where people would write stuff. You know, you could like get writing on the side, and I was going to put "Fear of a Black Riviera" on the side of my Rivi. So that's what I'm saying. Like, each one of these things, we all have little touch points. Again, the engine sees in a week, so you know, there went that. Sorry, Grandma, and your inheritance money. But anyway, yeah.
That's dope.
To that same point, when Pickett was talking about hearing The Message for the first time, so he obviously heard The Message before I ever heard it. But when I went back to The Message from my starting point, I fell in love with hip hop again. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is like, you know, everything I loved about Public Enemy, but it happened like years before. Like, so yeah, it's you get a chance to just like, you know, we might all fall in love with it again tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? We might fall in love with it again in this conversation. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's real dope, and I agree. I'm glad Manny Faces brought that up, because for those that don't know, Soup is my little cousin. So check out his Mad Player podcast and Hip Hop Saves America podcast. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, but when he mentioned Outkast, I had the opportunity to open up for Outkast on that first album at Memorial Hall here in Dayton, Ohio, and just having that opportunity. Like you said, that was falling in love with it when I heard that album. It was incredible. And I know that for those that, you know, he's kind of so-called canceled now, Russell Simmons, he talked about that in his book, that at first he couldn't get Outkast. He couldn't get it. But I instantly got it, even though it was different. And like I said, it was a falling in love. And I think that we have those situations every few years. When I first hooked up with Cooley, I was kind of like really disappointed with hip hop and where it was at, and I guess what you would say, the mainstream of it. And it's funny now because like they kept telling me about Kendrick. I'm like, okay. But then when I heard "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe," it's like, oh, I get it. And then I went back and listened to the previous joints. Like, I don't know how I didn't get it before. And it's like, okay, I understand now. And I think that happens too. Is sometimes we don't get things right away. And that's what it makes it great too, to re-fall in love with it again.
So does that mean you're gonna pull out your old MC Hammer tapes and re-fall in love with that?
See, I never fell in love with Hammer. So you have to leave that to Cooley because I never. Okay, I'll say this. I like Don't Get It Started. I like that joint, but the rest of the stuff I couldn't get into it.
You know what you could do now, that what I find myself doing now though, like I guess we all kind of like, can't touch this. You know what I mean? Like it was a moment that everyone was kind of like, it was there. And it was like, all right, I wasn't out there, dancing in the spot, but but we can also now look back and say, all right, that maybe wasn't our thing, but he had a big movement. He had a big fan base, like his impact on the genre. Like we can look back now a little bit more, analytically or whatever, and be like, again, even if someone's music you might not like, Bone Thugs and Harmony, I don't know why you wouldn't, but some people don't, but their impact and what they did and how, so we can look back at folks like Hammer now and still kind of look at it as that was important. He was important, whether we dressed in the Hammer pants, or not, you know what I mean? So that's something I do like now, like looking back at things I didn't get then. Like you said, didn't get it. I didn't get it then. I wasn't from the Bay Area, you know what I mean? Like Outkast was tough for New York cats to kind of, like we didn't. It's a whole different. I live in Atlanta now. So even now I'm like, oh, this is Atlanta. Okay, it's different, And so, but we can look back now and just recognize that those regional differences were important to the genre. The impact on each other, each different region kind of influencing the other, and Hammer was a part of that. A lot of folks like that. So.
Yeah, and like they say, it ain't where you from, it's where you're at. So it's not how you got into it necessarily as much as it is to be like, Hammer, Young MC, all that was my introduction, like technically, that's when I first heard it. But I can't knock them though, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be knee deep in it like I am now. It wouldn't have changed my life like it did.
Your gateway drug.
Exactly.
MC Hammer is always interesting to me because I was so young when he came out, but I also had people like Pickett who was exposing me to different things. So for me, MC Hammer showed me very early on that there's subgenres within hip hop. So you have this stuff that plays on the radio and you can dance and get the party started, but then you also have stuff where you're not going to hear it on the radio. You probably aren't going to listen to it either in your car or in your house. So I mean, like I said, I was little, so I was out there trying to get my Chinese typewriter on and all that stuff. But, as I got a little older, I mean, I always appreciated Hammer, but, when I look back at it now, it's like, it's a little cringeworthy.
Yeah. I like that Manny Faces brought that up, rethinking about it. Because, like I said, I wasn't really into it then, but I was into going to clubs in the late 80s, early 90s. I went to the club Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. Even though I was still in high school in the late 80s, early 90s, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we went to the club. And most guys, the guys that wasn't rhyming and dancing, they was there with you to get on the girls. Not that we didn't want to get on the girls, but we had this thing like we want to battle anybody in dancing when we go. That's why we went out every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And of course, that's going to get you the girls too. But my point is that they played a lot of joints that you wouldn't play at home. The Tone Lopes, the Young MCs, which I didn't get into. Like those weren't albums that I were buying, But of course they're gonna play them because they're dance clubs and they had those dance songs. So I think looking back at it now, like Manny Faces said, that no, it wasn't something I was into, but I get it. It pushed the clubs. Because the girls want something that they can dance to. They aren't there to battle. They just want to, shake some breasts and butt, and and holler, woo! When they talk. So I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't even think about that.
Let's follow like E40. I can't. I still can't. You know what I mean? But I can't now discount his audience and his impact. There's a lot of people. You know what I mean? So I have to, and this is important. I think as we get older, in hip hop, but still connected to it. And we might talk about this later. We might not get into it now. Maybe I know you're doing a whole series about looking at the younger generation, and not always. We're very quick a lot of times to discount what people are doing because we don't vibe with it. But look back at what I'm saying about E40. Is his impact, can't be denied. His catalog can't be denied. The way that people feel about him from that region that have come up with him, that can't be denied. Just because I don't click with it doesn't mean that I should discount it. I should find the value in it. And I think that happens with older people, younger people, and being jaded by what we may see as being the face of hip hop, music and culture out there. And then, kind of curmudgeonly getting back and be like, this is not the hip hop I know. And I don't, I want more, because we know that it exists. We know that it's out there. We're talking about it. We're connoisseurs and purveyors of it. So we know that it exists. And I think that's that whole mentality of let's not just dismiss something because it's not our vibe, and I think that's important as we talk about hip hop history, but as I like to talk about hip hop future, so.
Oh, definitely. And I know Cooley wants to jump in right there, but I would just want to quickly on your point that you said that as far as when it comes to generational things, and Cooley that's my teacher when it comes to that, because he used to talk about old heads and not getting modern day music, and I was one of those people. But one thing he posted not too long ago, maybe a month or two ago, where he talked about, instead of talking about so much the things that you don't like, how about talking about the things that you do like? So I definitely that's something that we need to do more. But I'll let Cooley jump in because he's itching to get in right now.
E40, I just want to say E40 is the greatest rapper of all time, and
I knew that was coming.
E40 is a factual GOAT. I could mathematically break it down for you in another conversation. So yeah, he's a great.
I respect that.
Okay, so for me, I fell in love with hip hop a little bit way late, because my parents were business owners and we went to church every Sunday, and on Sunday it was Anita Baker and old school 70s music while we cleaned the house after we went to church. So I didn't really get introduced to hip hop probably until about middle school, like the early 90s or so. And because I didn't come into it the way that you guys came into it, I fell in love with the whack rappers. The quote unquote people that you wouldn't tell people that you listen to, like MC Hammer, Tone Loc, Young MC. They were safe rappers that I could listen to around my mom or my grandma, who, my grandma cussed like a sailor, home on leave, but you better not cuss in front of her. And so music with a lot of cuss words, she would always be like, oh, that's Nick, that's what you're listening to? And she was like appalled by it. So I found myself leaning toward more of those safer rappers. And it wasn't until let me see, I liked No Limit and all of them, and of course they came along later.
You don't say you love No Limit.
Leave me alone.
There's nothing wrong with loving No Limit.
Right. When Pickett and I met, I actually had the No Limit chain with the tank. I had the chain and the emblem. I had the t-shirts. I had all the tapes. You couldn't tell me nothing. When I got my first car, the first song I banged was Ice Cream Man. And I thought I was that deal, riding down Gettysburg, and nobody else is vibing but me. And maybe my three friends. Right, yes. Yes, like Mia X was like my big sister. The first gift that Pickett ever gave me was a hip hop mixtape, and it was double-sided, and it had all of these groups I had never heard of, and I actually thought he was, yeah,
there
like
was
I
no
thought he
limit
was
on the whole tape. I can assure you that. There wasn't a single take on the tape.
No, there was Mos Def, there was Talib Kweli, there was Brand Nubian, there was UMCs. There was like these people, and I was like, these are rappers? Are you pranking me? Like, are you for real? And it was like my introduction to hip hop for real. So I came by it very, very late, and and now I'm a full head. And as a teacher, when my students are bringing music to me that they listen to, I'm trying not to be the picket in their lives to go, that is whack. Let me give you something real. But that's really where I'm at with a lot of it. And when I tell the kids that I don't listen to the stuff that they listen to, and they're like, well, why not? And I'm like, well, because my husband is a rapper and he don't play those games, and all his friends are rappers, and they make sure that I stay away from the whackness. And they'd be like, wow, you can't even listen to what you want. I'm like, but I don't want to listen to that. Like it's quite awful. So with that, when did music switch? And now you guys are all huge heads, and none of you, I'm sure, listen to the radio. So the stuff that my students listen to, that they play for me, that I'm cringing while I'm listening, but I'm listening just so I have a frame of reference. When did it switch from what you love to what it is now, that when you hear it, you just go, what is this?
Well, for me, it's always been that way. I mean, like I said, I'm a lot younger than you guys, so what they play on the radio isn't ever what I listen to, like in my car, in my house, or anything like that. So I can't even tell you the last time I put on the radio and listened to it. For me, I don't think there ever has been a switch. I mean, obviously with hip hop becoming bigger and more global, but I mean, I remember in college, like, yeah, my other cousin has this joke, and he always says, if Soup didn't know you, he didn't listen to your music. And so that's what I've always been on. But for me, it's always been that way. You have commercial hip hop here, and you have real hip hop or whatever you enjoy over here.
I think also there's been a lot of stories that you hear about, like even Too Short said, like, Too Short used to make conscious music, alongside what you would consider not conscious music. But, there's stories that he'll tell about how the label was like, okay, you got to stop making money in the ghetto. You got to start making, more of the whistle, you know what I mean? Or whatever. So obviously there is an agenda, and I don't want to discount that because that's factual. But it's also, it's curious to me when people say, when did it switch? Because it's like it switches all the time. You know what I mean? Today, Pickett's going to come over, we're going to record. And while we're recording, we might fuck with a sound that we never heard before, and it might switch a little bit right then and there for us. You know what I mean? You might, Manny might be getting ready for a DJ set, and then he finds something that's, maybe not, maybe people didn't expect him to play, but it goes well with whatever he was planning on playing anyway. It might switch a little for him then, so it's always switching. Obviously, like, the agenda may shine a light on certain stuff that they want to practice population control or whatever, the dumbing down the people with, but some of that stuff, it's not like it's not like those dudes or those ladies are sitting in the studio like, let's make something that's just gonna like fuck everybody up. You know what I mean? Like, they're making something that's jamming to them, and then somebody's maybe using that to an evil end or whatever. But it's always switching. It's always gonna keep switching, and I gotta fight it too, because I'm 38. I'm not like Pickett old, you know what I'm saying? But I'm getting up there, and so I have to fight it too. I gotta fight it, but so I work at a record store now, and I've been working at a record store for some years. And what I that's kind of helped me kind of turn down the bitterness, because if I see somebody come in and they buy a Young Thug record, and they're like excited as fuck to get that record, and I can tell that that does something to them. Like, it makes them feel like how what I love makes me feel. It's like, it's hard to, when you see that genuine love for the artist from somebody, it's hard to judge. It gets harder to judge, because it's like, shit, I want you to have a good time too. You know what I mean? And if you don't have a good time listening to Nas like I do, I don't want you to have to force yourself to listen to, something that you're not really gonna maybe understand in the moment yet, or you're not, to that point yet in your life or whatever. Like, just enjoy, man. It's gonna keep switching. There's always gonna be stuff we don't like. Again, there is an agenda with some of it, and I'm not signing that, but it's like sometimes we think too deep about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, there was a switch. I can't pinpoint an exact date or time or anything, but I think not necessarily a switch. I would say that something was taken away. You always had things like I talked about Young Massey and Hammer earlier and your NWA, but like let's take for example like Rap City. You would see NWA, but then you would see Tribe as the next video. You would see Hammer, but then you would see, you know what I'm saying, something that's more on a hip hop, like Third Base, the next video. And there was some point in time where we stopped having a mixture of a variety of what's being played, at least in the mainstream. And I think that's one of the things that made me kind of like bitter towards hip hop until Cooley, and you know, he got me through that. Is, you know, like I said, he posted not too long ago. Instead of talking about what you don't like, talk about what you do like. And I think that's the goal now, and most important is like, if you like that, go ahead and like it. But I'm going to make sure that I post and make sure that I talk about, you know, Griselda and Kendrick's got a new joint coming out, and Q-Tip might be, whenever I see things like that, this person has that I like is doing something, I'm going to make sure that I post. I'm going to share it. If it's something, you know, even if it's like a work buddy or something like that, hey, have you heard this? You know, and I think that's what's important. So like I said, I can't pinpoint a switch, but I think that's what, for me, what it was, that something got deleted. You know, and that balance is what got deleted.
I got a lot to say about a lot of this, so I'll be as brief as possible because I can talk. And by the way, I'm picking old too, damn it. A few things happened over a decent amount of time. I think if you had to say what really changed, it was the decline in sampling, right, in music making, and the increase of technology to be able to distribute and create music sort of as a bedroom producer. I think once you stop sampling and, you know, ringtone rap started becoming a thing, strip club music, which was less complex, let's say, you know, musically and lyrically than what we had been used to in previous generations as being sort of on the forefront, even with like, you know, radio rap, you know, in the 90s with, you know, with Mobb Deep or, you know, Biggie and Pac and things like that. There's lyricism still was there, but that transition to, I think, the end of sampling, when you couldn't use samples as much, couldn't afford to, you know, clear samples. The lawsuits had really kind of pushed down, and people were starting to be able to make music at home. Didn't mean it was good. And again, that ringtone rap, that sort of simplistic sound that was great in a strip club where you didn't have to be lyrically intense because no one wants to listen to Immortal Technique in the strip club. That just opened the door for a lot of people to make music that was, again, more simplistic. I'm not denigrating it. I'm trying not to do that because, you know, there was some value to it all. But the technology became easier and easier to get. You had Fruity Loops on your computer. You could actually make songs. You could make albums. And then you didn't have to have a label. You could, you know, or you could do what Soulja Boy did, where he dropped it into LimeWire, right? The peer-to-peer sharing system, and fooled everyone by naming some song, you know, his song, somebody else's song. Everyone downloaded, everyone got, like, those little technological things opened up a lot of opportunity for people who didn't necessarily take the craft as seriously or hadn't been doing it for many, 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 many years. You could literally come out, do a song, you know, for fun, and Bobby Shmurda it, you're the biggest star tomorrow, literally overnight, because of technology. So I think technology did a lot to make all that happen. I want to say just like two quick things. Number one, I want anyone listening, and y'all will agree with me, I hope, that today, right now, is probably to me, definitively, the most progressive time for hip hop music, for rap music, ever.
Definitely.
Right? So we all talk about, you know, what's on the radio, and I love your point, bro, that you said, like, I listen to the radio, I hear the songs and stuff, I know what they are, but that's not really what I listen to. Now, my daughter's 22 years old, and, you know, I paid, you know, she knows the songs on the radio, but she's listening to Rod Wave, right? Who's not on the radio, you know what I mean, but is really popular among younger people, certain, demographic, certain areas and sounds. So I'm already learning that even what people now who don't like what's on the radio, the people that listen to the radio don't even like what's on the radio. You know what I mean? Like they listen to the radio, but that's not where they're going, because they have in the palm of their hand every song that ever. And there's artists making music with their home, setups now, and it's getting more complex again. See how it is? It's getting more complex with the home studios now. So now you're getting really innovative people doing really innovative work. Now, I agree with the agenda to and it's a longer conversation, but I know what you're saying, and I agree, and that's a problem. But it doesn't stop the fact that if whatever you want from hip hop, whatever you want exists, I promise you. And if anyone listening doesn't agree, I think we all have the receipts. We could all sit down with you and show you, oh, check out. And then lastly, the point that you're making, Pickett, about saying, and this is what I'm doing now, I'm saying what I like. I'm saying what exists. And I can say Napoleon the Legend, Kemba, Rhapsody, blah, blah, Genesis B, Griselda. Like we could run names for an hour. And one of the biggest problems that older folks in hip hop do, especially some with a platform, and I'm talking about like the Questloves and the Pete Rocks of the world, they will come out on this tip that we're talking about saying everything's horrible and it's, rap is done. And I'm going back to my CDs and the hell with everything. And what you're doing by doing that, especially if you have a platform, is you're smacking in the face the 19 and the 20 and the 21-year-olds like Kemba, who's a little older now, but whatever, making music that older folks will be able to appreciate. I like what Earth Gang is doing. You know what I mean? I like what Tierra Whack was doing. You know what I mean? Like there's some stuff out there that's kind of fly, but they ain't on the radio. So if you're just saying, oh, I'm turning on the radio, or drive my kid to school, and so we play, Hot 97 or whatever, wherever whatever station, and you don't like what you hear, okay, I bet you there's 19 and 20-year-olds that are making music that you'll like. You got to just be able to know where they are. And we don't have the disposable time to be able to find them on our own. And there's no good hip hop journalism that's going to point you in the right direction. That doesn't exist. But it's out there, and we do have Spotify, and you can fine tune your preferences and get what you like and discover some new stuff. And I promise you it exists. So again, I could talk forever on these little topics, but I hope that was valuable.
Real quick, I like something you said, that it's out there, and I have a couple friends who are always like, oh, there's no good music, and I'm like, well, you're just not looking for it. And I think there's some people, for lack of a better term, I'll call them lazy consumers. So they're going to take whatever they hear on the radio, or if a friend tells them, oh, you should check out such and such. But then you have people like the people in this podcast that are used to digging, used to just going to a random show just to hear what is out there and stuff. So people like us, we do know there's a bunch of stuff available out there. So it's just a different mindset. Like you said, switch your preferences on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. But there's plenty of good new hip hop music out there. You just have to look for it. But if you're not used to doing that, you're not going to find it.
I agree
100%.
Totally, 100%. And we talked about Spotify and radio. Just real quick, there are internet radio stations that you can get. Shout out to bonfireradio.com. Shout out to Southern Vanguard Radio, that you can get. I don't have the right word. A collective alternative to what the radio gives you. And then, like Manny Face said, you have your phone at your disposal. You have computers at your home. You have computers at work. Everybody has a computer in their pocket now. And like Soup said, they're lazy consumers. And especially when it comes to me, Cooley, Manny Face, we come from an era where you had to go dig anyway. And to this day, I think that we all still love doing it. I know I do. I don't have the money to do that anymore, but
I'm still digging right now. Look at these 45s. I'm still digging. I pulled my old records out the thing. I'm still digging to this day. You know?
I still love it. Hey, Cooley's behind Cooley. You see this?
We got to have a battle. Let's go.
Yeah, so definitely it's lazy consumer. I love that term you said. That's exactly what the thing is, because I see so many people, especially in my age group, that there's no good music. Hip hop is dead. Like, no, it's still out there. You just got to do what we did when we were kids. You have to go find it, because a lot of dope hip hop wasn't on the radio back in the 80s and even in the 90s. You still had to go to a record store and get it. And a lot of times
you listen to mixtapes.
Yeah, you mixtape. And you would have to buy a lot of those albums without knowing what they even sound like. So yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up, because like I've heard that argument my whole life. You know what I mean? Since the early '90s, I've heard everything new is trash, and it's like, okay. And I had patience for that conversation for a long time, and that's why I'm glad I met Pickett when I did, because he's been saying that I've kind of helped him get over that. Now, if I'd have met Pickett tomorrow and he was on that shit that he was on, 11, 12 years ago when we first picked up, I wouldn't even entertain the conversation, because now I'm where Manny's at with it. It's like, man, this is the most diverse time. There's not enough time. I dig. My job is to dig. I get paid to dig, and I still don't have enough time to dig up all the dope shit that's coming out. So, like, now when people make that argument, it's just like, man, so why are you listening to the radio? If you hate the radio so much, why the fuck is it always on? Like, you know what I mean? Plug your phone in, put some headphones in, do something, you know what I'm saying? Change it up. Like,
I think if the thing about hip hop is you have to have that responsibility, right? Lovers of hip hop, people that came up in the culture. If you are of the culture, if you consider it to be your culture, just like you ride for your ethnicity, or you ride for your neighborhood, or you ride for your family. If it's your culture, you have a responsibility to ride for it. And if the end of your ride is, well, it's no good music anymore, I'm done, then I gotta question your loyalty to the culture. To be fair, like, you're not helping, because somebody's listening to you and agreeing with you. I hate it with a passion, because again, you'll see, I don't want to keep calling them out, but I've seen Pete Rock do this, where he had that thing with Young Dolph a few years ago, and he defecates all over some young artist. Okay, cool. There are 28,948,012 responses of people saying, "Word, ain't no good hip hop. Word, yeah, that's right. You tell him, preach, said it." All he had to do with his platform, and this goes for anybody with a platform, if it's 4 people to 4 million, is say, "I think this is garbage, but here's a young cat that I do like," and name drop him. That's all you got to do. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? And then the argument to that is, well, they don't know who they are, because the OGs and the pioneers, they're kind of in their ivory tower. Okay, then maybe you shouldn't be saying anything, because I think you're harming the culture by giving the impression that there's no good music being made today. You're damaging the culture that you claim to love, and that's I don't know, that's a problem to me.
It's no way to live your life, just like in general, to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, to just be mad about everything new that comes out is no way to live. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't live like that, man. I would rather search for something I love than whine about what's been spoon fed to me that I don't like.
I don't like how they make sneakers now. They're too complicated. There's too many things happening on sneakers. There's too many things. I just give me my old white Adidas and I'm good. But you don't hear me walking around in 20-year-old sneakers. Like, I'm gonna find the ones I like.
There's a sneaker conspiracy, and they're trying to keep us down with all this extra stuff.
I'm done preaching. That's it.
So, Lady Bounce, you got one more. We got time for about 1 or 2 more questions here.
Okay, so you guys have pretty much covered everything, but there's something, because it's a panel of men. I have to ask this question. When it comes to females in rap, which we have a whole nother show in our series about women in hip hop, but I gotta ask, how do you feel about the over sexualization that the female rappers have now? Is that something that has always been there and we just didn't notice it? Or is this new with the strippers turned rappers?
I'll go first on that. I don't think that it's all I don't think that it's always been there. but once it got here, it has been the predominant when it comes to female MCs. I would like for us, which we'll talk about it later in the series, that we stop saying that, period. Let's stop saying female MCs. Let's just say MCs, period.
Please, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, but since we're saying it right now, I'll say that once it got here, it became, because you had before Little Kim, maybe. Like I said, my timing may be a little bit off. It wasn't super sexualized for women as artists, as far as MCing. And you had female MCs. You had Moni Love. You had Latifah. You had Lynn Q. You had Shantae Roxanne Shantae. You had the real Roxanne. And to that point, I think the real Roxanne might have been the most sexual, but it wasn't pornographic sexual. It was more like fur coat sexy. I don't know what you want to call it, but it wasn't squat down and get your pop on or whatever you want to call it now. So I think once it did become this big exploitation, when you get to Little Kim era, then you had them coming out the woodworks, the LaChats, and so on and so on and so forth. But we still today have female MCs that can just rock bars. Me and Cooley had a chance to see Lyric Jones a few years ago, and that was the first time I even heard of her. And before we went, I started looking her stuff, and she's, she still has the kind of a sex appeal, but that's not the main ingredient in her artistry. Her main ingredient is that she can spit. And we have Shay Noir, we have Rod Digger, we have Rhapsody. And I think that's enough to say that we need to stop saying female MCs, because they could beat most of these dudes in a battle that everybody loves. These guys that are supposed to be so great, they will probably destroy in a battle.
I would chime in with this. So I think what we have to, anytime we have this over-sexualization of topic come up, we have to think, so the gate was closed to females a lot of the time. You know what I mean? Like it's a male-dominated culture, right? So we weren't really letting all that many females even speak, to be honest, for a long, long time, right? It would be, somebody, a Queen Latifah would get in here, and you know what I mean? Like, it's certain people that were able to break through the glass ceiling. But so I have a lot of female friends. Most of the people I hang out with are females, and some of them, their idea of a good time is to sit at home and read a book and have a nice quiet night. And some of their idea of a good time is they just want to go catch a dick on Friday night. And so there's a lot of females are diverse people. You know what I'm saying? There's gonna be like the more females that get in to the part of the culture where people are they have a platform and people are paying attention to them, the more you're going to see more sex, and you're going to see more knowledge, and you're going to see more love, and you're going to they're complex people, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not really over, like the sex sells, obviously, right? So like that's the kind of like the easier entry point, maybe. But that's real too. That's part of them. That's part of me. You know what I mean? Like I like sex also. So it's like I don't see it as I don't see it as much of an agenda or as like a bad thing even. You know what I mean? Like what's wrong with sex? I don't know.
I'll say I answer over-sexualization in hip-hop the same way I answer homophobia in hip-hop. This is America. America is over-sexualized. We've always been on that tip, and America is homophobic. Like, because we're have certain foundations, religion or whatever you want to call it, that lead you down that way of thinking. So I often get a little, again, my job is sort of protect the reputation of hip-hop, right? And say, well, I mean, yeah, sure, there's homophobia in hip-hop. There's homophobia in communities from whence hip-hop comes. But it didn't start with hip-hop. It's not a hip-hop problem. It's a people problem. And we can take it back a step. Over-sexualization the same way. It happens because we live in that kind of society. Movies are that way, commercials are that way, country music is that way. Like everything is over sexualized in America. Now, we happen to use it in hip hop to great commercial success. Look at, Luke and them, and then big, Freaknik and, all these things that happened that, were lucrative. And then the whole strip club economy, which I think added to the idea of over-sexualization in hip-hop, because you had strip clubs that would hire the DJs from the radio to spin at the club, to break the songs that the strippers would dance to, and all that money, and then you pay the radio for the advertisement to go to the strip club, and it's this cycle of money that, had hip-hop at its core, and became obviously a large, lucrative, money-making thing. What I do want to say is it's still too much, because the problem of looking at women as sexual objects is a foundationally terrible thing, and it needs to be tamped down across all boards, not just hip-hop, but in hip-hop too. But I will say this: you will look at the stripper turn rap, you'll look at the Megs and the Cardis, and you will say, here's something that we didn't see in the Lil Kim or the other names that are typically thrown around when you talk about women that use sex to make it big in the rap industry. They probably, I don't know, I'm not in their business like that, but I hope and I get the idea that they're more in control of their business and their brand than women were in the past in hip hop, right? They're not being controlled by, they're not coming in. The whole thing about women MCs in hip hop is that you always had to come in through somebody else. You always had to come in through a crew. Eve had to come in through Rough Riders. Kim had to come through Biggie and them. There was always you had to come in, through dudes. And I see that women aren't restricted to that anymore. Now, there's a Rhapsody out there in the world. There's a Cardi B. Two different styles. Again, all spectrum of women MCs, or MCs that happen to be women, to your point earlier, that they exist. I can find humorous, MCs. I can find a No Name who has an abolitionist bookstore. You know what I mean? Like, the whole spectrum of MCs that happen to be women exist. If there's going to be over-sexualization, I would love women to be controlling their own brand and their own image and their own body and how it's portrayed to the world. If they want to rock as sex pots, cool, as long as they signing all the checks and it's all going to them. If they want to, if it's somebody else kind of pulling them strings because they think that that's what we still need in hip hop to sell, then that's a trend I'd like to see tamped down, just like I'd like to see it across all of society, because it does lead to over-sexualization of women and violence against women and girls, and then that trickles into other areas like, police violence against, or state violence against women and girls, particularly Black women and girls, or women and girls of color. So it all has ramifications down the social spectrum. But, yeah, I think I said it all.
I gotta agree with the OGs. I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, for me, it all boils down to money. And like Manny just said, if Meg and Cardi are in control of it and they're okay with it, who am I to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that? So, I mean, yeah, good job, guys. Said everything I was gonna say.
A lot of times too, it's I hear this argument from men. You know what I mean? I don't hear a lot of female journalists, pop journalists, complaining about this. You know what I mean? So it's just like, well, why is it that a woman has to be a certain way in your mind, bro? Like, what happened to you? What you know what I'm saying? How are you raised where like a woman can only be this one way? You know what I'm saying? And they're not supposed to be sexy, or they're not supposed to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why you wanted to put clothes on so bad, bro. I gotta ask that. That's every time I hear this argument, it's always like a dude that's bringing it up, and it's like, man, what? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I will say the prominent women that I hear that do have that argument against it are women trying to stop like sex trafficking and women that have been abused. And I think that a lot of times we don't hear about that in the media as much, but I think that the women that, like you said, I usually hear that argument from men, but I think the women that do argue against it, and that's the reason that they do argue against it. Before we get out of here, I just want to thank everybody for coming along. Manny Faces, Hip Hop Can Save America, Soup, Mad Player Podcast, Cooley the Curator, Incredible MC DJ, and producer. Make sure you check Cooley the Curator's page because he is like gigging and in the pocket right now. Of course, follow Manny Faces. Hip hop can save America, and that's something that I do believe and I talk about all the time. And the Mad Player podcast, make sure you check them out. But before we do get out of here, let's get into my favorite part of the show. Doom, 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 doom. Brain science, 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 science.
All right, let me switch this view right quick. All right, so we're talking about music and the music's effect on its brain. Research has shown that listening to music can reduce anxiety, blood pressure, and pain, as well as improve your sleep quality, your mood, your mental alertness, and your memory. Everyday brain boost from music. The power of music isn't just limited to helping you wake up in the morning, helping you, be happy, be sad. It jumpstarts your creativity. So here's a way to do that, which we all kind of talked about. Listen to what your kids or grandkids are listening to. Experts suggest that often we continue to listen to the same songs or the genre of music that we did during our teens and our 20s, and we generally avoid hearing anything that's not from that era. New music challenges the brain in a way that old music doesn't. It might not feel pleasurable at first, but that unfamiliarity forces the brain to struggle to understand the new sound. Music can also help you recall memories from long ago. Reach for familiar music sometimes, especially if it stems from the same time period that you are trying to recall. Listening to the Beatles might bring you back to that first moment you saw your spouse for the first time. Listen to your body. Pay attention to how your body reacts to different forms of music and pick the kind that works for you. What helps one person concentrate might be distracting to someone else. And what helps one person unwind might make another person jumpy. So if you want to firm up your body, head to the gym. If you want to exercise your brain, listen to music. There are few things that stimulate the brain the way music does. If you want to keep your brain engaged throughout the aging process, listening to or playing music is a great tool. It provides a total brain workout. And to add to this fun fact, singing is the only activity you can do that uses both sides of your brain at the same time.
Word up.
I just learned something new. I didn't know that.
I would start
I didn't know
singing.
that
I was
either.
gonna start
Singing.
singing, but I don't think y'all want that. I think it's true. I think this is true because of that. People who stutter, who have like a stuttering problem, if they don't stutter when they sing, because it just comes a different way. So yeah, brain is dope.
Word up,
Hey,
fellas.
man, I like that hoodie, man. I need to find out where I can get one of them hoodies, man. I like that hoodie.
Oh, that's his brand.
Yeah, you can get this at the go to hiphopadvocacy.org and we got a shop there. Yeah. Thank you.
Man, I gotta get one of them hoodies too. So starting with Manny, tell them where people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So 1,000 places. But the best thing to do is hiphopcansaveamerica.com. It takes you to where the podcast exists. There's a larger site there, which is the Center for Hip Hop Advocacy. It's sort of a nonprofit that exists to do what we're talking about now, kind of promote hip hop's ability to uplift humanity and improve society. But the podcast is the flagship. It's called Hip Hop Can Save America, hiphopcansaveamerica.com, and mannyfaces.com to find out some of the other things that I do. The podcast, interestingly enough, with brain sciences, I had a great episode with Dr. Elliot Gann, who talks about music's effect on. He's a psychologist he does therapeutic beat making sessions with young people all across the world. Just brilliant intersections of hip hop and how it can save America. We talk about that as like intersecting in these areas. So a lot of ways that science, music. I have school psychologists that use music. Again, we don't want to push our young people out by saying your music is garbage, don't bring that in my classroom. It's more like, why do you listen to that music and how can we connect with that understanding, even though I might have to like what you listen to. So anyway, a lot of that stuff is on the podcast. I welcome you to find me, and I'm all over the place. Manny Faces. Thank you.
Cooley.
I'm everywhere like air, but you could really find me at Cooley the Curator on Instagram. That's the platform I guess I use the most. I if you're in the Dayton area, you can come see me at Omega Music. That's like my little baby that I've kind of like helped blossom in the last 6 or 7 years. You can come dig for some music with me. We can chop music up all day long. I DJ at the Barrel House downtown Dayton on 3rd Street once a month for every first Friday. We call it Funky Friday. It's all funk, and it's funk that you know is funk, and it's funk that you maybe didn't know is funk because it came out recently, but it's all funk, and we funking it. And of course, wherever Pickett's at, you won't see me. So, wherever Lady bounces at, I'm right there with her. So let's go.
Soup.
SupeSoprano 6 on Instagram, as well as Mad Player Podcast on IG. We have a Twitter, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not in charge of it. So that's Podcast Player on Twitter. Real quick, I got to send a shout out to my man Cooley. He did a Mad Player mix for us, and we still getting numbers off of it. So if you need a DJ, that's the guy to go to.
Hey, that was fun too, because I learned about a lot of that I wasn't. Y'all gave me the tracks, and I didn't know about some of them, and now it's like my shit. So.
That's what's up, man.
I just want to say real quick, y'all mentioned Instagrams. I will say I'm Manny Faces Official on Instagram. There's another Manny Faces. Nice guy, just not me. So Manny Faces Official.
Word up. And you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. You can also get at us on social media like Facebook, IG, Twitter, and we're also now on TikTok. We are the Fly With Us podcast on all formats. Once again, fellas, thank you for coming through doing this. If you want to do more part of the series, you can sign up. There's still a lot of slots open, and the continuing the series. You can go to our Facebook page and see what those other topics are going to be if you want to get on them. I'm your boy Picket Fence,
and I'm your girl Lady Bounce.
We out of here.
Peace.
Peace.